sometimes it really takes 100% focus and dedication to get that business moving. Because if we're involved in so many different businesses, we start to lose the focus. Own that time, and that's controlling it, not making yourself available weekends so you can spend time with what's most important, which is your family. 1 hour towards health and wellness. Started doing that, and that's made all the difference. And because of that habit, everything else seems to kind of fall in place.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast, where you can escape the corporate trap through franchise ownership. Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the Franchise Guide.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide, the show where we help corporate execs experience time and financial freedom via franchising. Thanks for joining us today. So, want to record another episode regarding the national conference we just attended in Memphis, Tennessee. As I mentioned, we typically have 2 conferences a year, meeting some of the best brands, over 125 of the best brands, franchise brands out there, funding partners, colleagues, other franchise coaches and consultants. It was a blast. I learned something every conference. And for this particular conference, wanted to talk about the idea of essentially 3 ideas to double your income. I was asked to speak at the conference. We typically have a best practice session and wanted to share those ideas with everyone. And this applies to anyone that has a business, whether it's a side business, full-time business. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but wanted to get into those ideas. So the topics we discussed, and the title double your income. You can easily quadruple your income. There's so many, you're not restricted as far as growth, but I know personally, I'm going to talk about my personal experience. I've doubled my income based on these 3 principles. So number 1, I talked about the idea of focus. Well, what do I mean by focus? And the big takeaway there on focus is really focusing 100% to your business. Now, I grew up and, talking about, kind of learned about diversification. First career was in Wall Street. We always talk about a diversified portfolio, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But with that being said, when it comes to business, sometimes it really takes 100% focus and dedication to get that business moving. Because if we're involved in so many different businesses, we start to lose the focus. And I'm not saying this cannot be done, but initially to get the business up and running, and if it's something like a home services type of business in franchising, you get the business up and running, you get the right team in place, you get the one main point of contact, the general manager, and that's when you can start to diversify down the road. But initially, you want to be focused on the business 100% so that you're not giving 4 businesses 25% of your time initially, and none of those businesses kind of take off. Another part of that is sometimes it only takes 1 business, and that business is fine. And that business, gives you the 5 freedoms we talk about with Dan Sullivan, the financial, the time, the location freedom, et cetera, et cetera. So focus is big for me. Things that I proactively did to focus is number 1, dedicated 100% of my time towards my franchise coaching and consulting business, reinvested earnings from the business into, and which I've always done, into Wall Street, where it doesn't take much of my time, a couple meetings a year with our financial advisor, investing in things like real estate syndication. Again, doesn't take up a lot of my time, get to diversify in different asset classes and things like that, along with some other passive investments that, pay an annuity, pay a distribution on a monthly or quarterly basis. But point is, doesn't take up much of my time, so I can focus on my core business, which is what I truly enjoy doing. And that's helping people figure out if franchising is the right fit for them. So other proactive tips on focus: unsubscribing from emails that don't help you in any way possible. So unsubscribing. Social media, dedicating an hour a day to social media engagement, posting, as well as maybe, checking out for fun, Instagram, YouTube, that kind of stuff, and limiting the amount of time, as that was for me a time suck, spending way too much time on social media. It's also, with focus, it's, working with people and, staying in touch, networking, eliminating as much as possible people that are negative in your life, people that are always constantly complaining, maybe keeping those conversations to a minimum. things like that. So that's around the idea of focus. The second, and this was a big one that's helped me over the years, and I'm constantly improving, is the idea of owning the calendar. And what do I mean by that? So I learned this from a coach years ago. And owning the calendar essentially means is, allowing people to schedule on your calendar, but prior to doing that, putting your rocks, the important stuff on the calendar. And for me, that was saying, okay, it was, whether it's date night or having lunch with my wife once a week, putting that on the calendar, scheduling an hour for lunch, scheduling an hour to work out in the morning, any of the kids' events, school events, soccer, Girl Scouts, whatever the kids' sports or any type of activities all went on there first, birthdays and all that kind of stuff. And then from there, open up the calendar to the hours that I wanted to work during the day for anyone to book a call. So that's not keeping the calendar open, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, which is some mistakes I've made in the past. The workday seemed to just never end. So owning the calendar was a big one, prioritizing, allowing people to access the calendar and book accordingly, and just making easy for them to book, giving those email and text reminders, eliminating no shows, and then easily making it easy for them to reschedule or cancel if need be. Life comes up, right? There's emergencies and not feeling well that morning, and that person can easily reschedule without needing an assistant or emailing you and things like that. So owning the calendar, I think, is big. Dan Sullivan talks about time freedom as one of the big freedoms from owning a business. So own that time, and that's controlling it, not making yourself available weekends so you can spend time with what's most important, which is your family. And as a business owner, you're going to be getting pulled in all different directions, and vendors and clients and customers and things like that. So this is one way to get back your sanity and own your calendar. One thing I also did was certain calls like podcasts, for example, just blocking Wednesdays for those types of calls, allowing buffers, 30-minute buffers between calls, crucial, giving you time to take notes and maybe contact a franchise company or a candidate or client in between. So entering notes, you wait to do it at the end of the day, you start to forget. So by doing them right after the call while the information is fresh in your mind, that's helping with my productivity. And then number three, my three takeaways of doubling your income is this idea of mindset. And the idea of mindset is really, I talked about reverse engineering the process, just like we reverse engineer the process with our candidates, is having that end in mind. What are we trying to accomplish here? And maximizing, okay, in order to get to Z, we need to do Y, and vice versa. But when you have that end plan of where you want to be or what's the end goal, completely helps with how you lay out the day, what that looks like, the number of calls, the number of touch points. I think that's crucial. And these are always, there's always room for tweaking and improvement. After giving the call, I had some people approach me and I said, that's a good point. Maybe I want to make the buffer in between meetings a little bit less, or maybe I want to extend it. So, do I let someone book a call, or do I schedule the call with that individual? And that's something I said, that's a good point. Maybe I want to keep those calls always scheduled. So there's always ways of improvement. This is not what one size fits all. It's basically works kind of what works best for you, right? I'm not saying this is what you have to do and these are the only ways, but this is what personally worked for me. So when I got focused, owned the calendar, and now we're talking mindset, made a huge difference in my business. With mindset as well, we talked about, things such as, as I mentioned, you have everything booked on that calendar. You reserve the amount of time and the buffers and all that kind of stuff. But putting to this, I learned this from Tony Robbins, a map, a massive action plan. And that massive action plan is something I store in Google Sheets, easily shareable, review it every single morning. And it talks about my goals, where I want to be at for the year, not just business, but in life and in health and all financials. And there are 5 areas that I like to focus on. But not only that, but next to each goal, because goals are great, but I've noticed I wasn't really hitting those goals every single year, but more of an action plan. What are these from the book Atomic Habits? What is that habit that I need to create to get there? So from health, there's goals, of doing this. There's about 4 or 5 different goals that I have. But that atomic habit was scheduling essentially from 7 to 8 a.m. every morning, 1 hour, whether it be strength training, whether it be walking, whether it be cardio, meditation, mobility training, that kind of deal. But 1 hour towards health and wellness. Started doing that, and that's made all the difference. And because of that habit, everything else seems to kind of fall in place. So thank Tony Robbins for that, just really outlining it. But the other thing is, reviewing it every day, because subconsciously starts to kind of sink in and say, you know what, I have to do these things every single day. So to reiterate, we talked about focus. We talked about owning your calendar. We talked about having the right mindset, the mindset of kind of having this end goal and reverse engineering the process. Works personally, works for reviewing a franchise. I recommend this to everyone. So those are my top three. Talk was great. Love to share more detail with you. So if you want more information, you found this helpful, please comment. Please let me know if you want more information, if you want to even chat, about franchises, about being more productive, about doubling your income, whatever I can help with. Go to ggthefranchiseguide.com, book a call. Looking forward to it in 20 minutes or less. Definitely walk away with some type of learning something new, maybe make you laugh along the way. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks again for joining. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.